Good evening, good afternoon. I'm Yatish Goel, founder of Proponent Consulting and associated with PREDIXXA USA. We have today guest Stanley Labutis from Florida, USA. He is the founder and CEO of Survey Intelligence and PREDIXXA. I welcome you. Good morning, and I welcome Mr. Stanley to my show.
Well, good morning, Yatisha. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast today. Let me give you a little bit of background that I've been in the organization development business for about 30 years. And I've been working along with other experts in the field of organizational development. Now, before that, I was a practicing lawyer in the bankruptcy field. So I had a pretty good handle about organizational improvement, organizational change. Uh, so uh, I'm old enough to know that I've seen the evolution of organizational improvement that all executives have been exposed to in their journey of leadership. From the Baldrige era, then I went into the total quality management, if you recall that, then into re-engineering, then now balanced scorecard, then the net promoter score, on and on and on. Now, the one thing that I did notice about all of these improvements in helping organizations become profitable is that the technology that backed each one of those successive improvement products improved. So I was very keen when I heard your topic of being smart technology and business science, elevating profitability, because that's exactly the space that we're in.
Yes.
Uh, when we talk about smart technology, what do we mean by that? Well, we mean that this is some sort of software that's going to help us identify dysfunctions, things that are not working well. Okay, that's technology, smart technology. What do you mean business science? Business science is that intellectual approach that helps organization understands why dysfunctions exist and then how to improve them. So I guess the question that I'm going to ask everyone is elevating profitability being the dependent variable? Is smart technology in business science really enough to elevate profitability for all these CEOs that are worldwide and those that are listening to this podcast? What's missing? The dependent variable that's missing is leadership. Now, in COVID, entrepreneurial leadership is a little different than the leadership that leaders have been leading their organizations with for many, many years. So in this podcast, we need to talk about three topics. One, we need to talk about the entrepreneurial leader. What does that mean? Secondly, we have to talk about the smart technology. What does it do? And third, we need to talk about the business science, this intellectual business framework that guides leaders to make the right decisions. So those are the three topics, Yatish, that I think we should be talking about in this podcast. You agree?
Yes, yes, yes. So I would like to ask you a question on this area. In this post-COVID era, how are the entrepreneur leaders being created by using smart technology and business sciences, as well as how we can use other tools to measure organization and streamline or align for the alignment?
Well, I think first we need to define what is an entrepreneurial leader versus a leader that's not entrepreneurial. So I found a definition just for this podcast. I went on Google and I Googled, tell me what an entrepreneurial leader is. How do you define it? Here's the definition. Entrepreneurial leadership is a mindset that focuses organizations on turning problems into opportunities that create economic and social value. Well, why are entrepreneurial leaders necessary today? Well, I can tell you why. It's not magic. It's not rocket science. The world is beset with huge problems that are they're really uncharted territory for leaders of businesses today. COVID, the Ukrainian war, drought, famine, remote workers, the great resignation, technology changes, inflation, climate changes, retention of talent. Customers are buying different products and they're buying less. Some are buying more. These are all brand new issues that leaders are now struggling with and trying to cope with. Uncharted territory. Leaders need to put on a new hat. They need to look at these problems and create solutions quickly. Now, what's nice about smart technology and business science is that's going to help leaders become entrepreneurial to chart their courses for their corporations to do better. So, I wrote a book called Back from the Brink. And it talks about bringing organizations back from disruption. Now, the real question is that I'd like to ask your audience is, how do you grow your business in times of disruption? Well, you know what? You grow it the same way you did before the COVID era, before all of the problems that are besetting all leaders today. It's the same thing. You need to become better than your competitors. You need to make sure your customers love you and want to keep buying from you. Good leaders inspire people to be super engaged. Now, converting managers to great leaders, that's something that really all leaders should be working on today. Managers drive revenue. So you need great managers. So we need a way to discover parts of your business that are impacting the economy. Same as before pre-COVID. So what has changed? What's the new territory that's being created? Well, let me tell you a story. And this is a story about a little Dutch boy, about 17 years old, 16 years old. And he's walking by the seawall, and all of a sudden, he sees a leak in the seawall. And everybody knows in that part of the world, the sea is higher than the land. So what does the little boy, Dutch boy, do? He takes his finger and puts it inside the leak, stops the leak. Great leadership decision. Perfect. Until the second leak popped up. So he took his right hand and took his finger and put it in the second leak, looking around now to get help to plug the leak. Great leadership decision. He saw a problem, he took action, it was decisive, and it was the right thing to do. Until the third leak popped up. And then came the flood. So what's the lesson? The lesson is entrepreneurial leaders must recognize there's a gigantic difference between leadership and business systems. That gap is as wide as the Atlantic Ocean. So leadership deals with strategic roles, decision-making, vision, mission. The business systems deal with operational functions of the organization, of which the leaders have very little influence. So the moral of the story of the Dutch boy is that entrepreneurial leaders have to do two things. First, they have to solve and attack problems, and they also have to realize they solve and attack problems using business systems of which they have not intimate knowledge of and how they work. So I don't know if anyone in the audience has heard of something called the iceberg of ignorance. Well, back in the 1970s, early 80s, Yoshida did, Japanese researchers, they did some research around executives and business leadership and the problems hidden from senior leadership and management. You know, that research said that 4% Executives only see 4% of the business problems that are happening within the business structure, within the business systems. Who knows 100%? Employees, the workers, the managers. So how do you marry the leadership decision making, and how do you marry solving the problems using people in the organization? And that's where smart technology happens. So before I get into the technology, let me just give you a quote from Dr. Deming, that every business system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. So if your business is making $1 million a year, you know what? You're perfectly designed to be making $1 million a year. If you want to make $2 million a year, you are not perfectly designed to make $2 million. So the entrepreneurial leader now looks within the business systems. And that's step 3 of this model that we're talking about, business intelligence. So how do we do all of this? How do we make leaders get better? How do we make your audience look at organizations in a whole brand new entrepreneurial way? Which now leads us into the second topic of the podcast. That's the smart technology part. So let's start with a premise that every organization has disruptions and dysfunctions in their business. Most of them are nested into the business systems. They're not really tied to vision or mission or values. No, they're tied to operations. They're tied to delivery of goods and services to customers. They're tied to people engagement. They're tied to strategy deployment. Now, the difference is that disruptions are those misfunctions that really should be handled and solved by managers. Dysfunctions are much more serious. Dysfunctions impact organizational economic health. So the bottom line is that if you have the technology to identify the dysfunctions, understand their root causes, you can close the gaps. You can solve those and eliminate those dysfunctions and begin to improve performance, improve economics. That's the smart technology. So here's another example of how that works. And there's a lot of technology out there today. Some smart, some not so smart. But what you really want to do is look for technology kind of like this high school mechanic that works for a Maserati dealership. Now, my favorite story deals with a Maserati MC20 vehicle. It's a $252,000 motor vehicle, the most complex computerized engine in the marketplace today. And this high school, and soon the check engine light goes on. What do you do? You bring the car into the shop. And this high school grad with 3 months of training opens up the computer bag and plugs the computer into a slot in the car. And you know what? In 10 seconds, the root cause of the check engine light appears. Now that's smart technology. That's what entrepreneurial leaders need. That within minutes, they can identify root causes of dysfunctions within their organization. Simple as that. Well, now that we know what's broken in the organization, then the question is, well, how do we go about fixing it? How do we go about analyzing what's not working well within the business? And this leads me to the third topic, business science. What do we mean by business science? Well, we spent a lot of years researching various principles of organizational improvement, and we zeroed in on something called alignment. So that originated at Harvard Business School, where Professors Lawrence and Lorsch spent 30 years interviewing companies, writing reports. They were focusing their research on collaboration, and they discovered that those organizations that are collaboratively aligned with each other outperform by every financial measure every other non-aligned company. Well, what do we mean by collaboration? People think, well, collaboration, you're communicating. You've got to talk to your people. We're collaborating. I want to talk and collaborate with my vendors. Or no. We're talking about collaboration of business systems. It's the integration of how strategy is built and designed around customer requirements. It's around how strategy is deployed down to the people of the organization rapidly, because strategies need to change. And people respond, know what they need to do, and to meet customer requirements and process requirements. That's that collaboration. It's that working of the systems. And the last system is process delivery to customers. We call that organizational alignment. It's in my book. My brother George wrote a couple of books back in the late 90s on organizational alignment, power of alignment. It's a terrific read. It's really a breakthrough in how to take organizations and move them rapidly toward profitability. It's that integration. Notice it's about business systems. Let me remind you what Dr. Deming said. Every business system is perfectly designed to get the results you're getting. So now if you're losing $1 million, you know what? You're perfectly designed to lose $1 million. The smart technology identifies the dysfunctions. You eliminate the dysfunctions. You align your organization. You're now heading to profitability. It's really as simple as that. Well, that's the beauty in the integration and the marriage between entrepreneurial leadership, smart technology, and business intelligence. So that's my thinking. And any other thoughts, Yatish?
You said very clearly, and I hope that the people who are working in the senior level, they will understand what what insight you have given to them, and for alignment, they may they can leave us comment on below this video, and since this is a small podcast, in detail program we can do it later on privately. So they may write to us and put up comments or put up the question and answer questions, and we may answer to them.
Perfect.
So I thank Stan to give for giving us the time and giving a broadcast live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, so that audience can view us and write to us and ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah.